If you're in real estate and you're still manually cold calling leads, guess what? There's a better way. In this video, I'm going to show you a fully automated cold calling system for real estate agents using Airtable, N8N, VAPI, and Google Calendar. I'm going to show you a demo of this workflow, and then I'll walk you through each node step by step. Before we hop in, my name's Matt. I show you to build better systems, how to connect your tools, automate repetitive work, and keep your data organized. And for select businesses, I can even help you implement. The result, less grunt work, fewer drop balls, and way more clarity. If you want to build this for yourself or follow along, I give these workflows away to email subscribers. You'll get the full N8N template, VAPI prompt, and Airtable base, all for free. Just use the link below in the description to sign up. Now let's check out the demo. Okay, so there are two parts to this workflow. The first part collects or extracts data from Airtable and then uses VAPI to call the prospect and then sends all of the post-call data back over to Airtable. The second part of the workflow schedules the follow-up call. Let's go ahead and demo the workflow. Hello?
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm an AI assistant calling from Mountford Homes. May I speak to Matt?
This is him.
Hi, Matt. Thanks so much for picking up. I'm reaching out about your property for sale. Do you have a few moments to chat? I just have a few quick questions to understand your situation better.
Sure.
Great, thank you. First, can you tell me what type of property it is? For example, is it a single family home, townhouse, condo, or something else?
It's a single family home.
Thank you. And how many bedrooms and bathrooms does your home have?
3-bedroom, 2.5 bath.
Perfect, thank you. Do you currently own the home?
No, I don't.
Thanks for letting me know. Just a few more questions. What's your timeline for selling the property?
We'd like to sell as soon as possible.
Understood, thank you. What's motivating you to sell right now?
We're looking to move into a bigger home.
Thanks for sharing that. What's most important to you when selling your home? For example, are you looking for the highest price, a quick sale, or something else?
A combination of speed and value.
Thanks for clarifying. Are you currently working with any agency to help you sell your home?
Not at the moment, no.
Thank you for sharing that. Would you be interested in working together with Minthood Homes to help sell your property?
Yeah, I'd be interested in discussing it.
That's great to hear, Matt. Would you like to schedule a follow-up call with one of our agents to go over your options and answer any questions? If so, can you let me know what date and time works best for you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Could we do October 1st at 1 p.m.?
Thank you, Matt. Your follow-up call with one of our agents is confirmed for October 1st at 1 p.m. We look forward to helping you make this move as smooth as possible. If you have questions before then, feel free to reach out. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Okay, now that the workflow has finished, what I want to do now is walk you through each node step by step so you can understand how everything is put together. So we're just going to start from the top and work our way down. So this first row of nodes are all Airtable nodes. And what we're doing is we're pulling various bits of information from different tables within our base. So I'll show you our Airtable base first. And I have multiple tables. And I had this set up so that way we have our leads that come in. We also have another table for our contacts. And then we have another table for the phone calls themselves. And then we have one for tasks, which isn't important for this workflow. And then we have one for properties. which is in this particular case, is the property that the real estate is reaching out and hoping to work with the prospect on for selling it. And then we have a README folder, which I added so you can understand some of the custom fields or custom columns that I put in. So this workflow starts with a record that has a status of new. And so what this allows us to do is to have multiple records in the same table, but without the fear of calling the same person over and over again. So you'll see, if you remember from the demo, it called Matt Gear or it called Matt. And that was because this was set as new and then the workflow finished and now it's set as follow up. So if we were to run the workflow again, the agent would call Matt Jones. So we start with the leads table, which is what I just showed you. And the status is set to new. So status, new. And for this workflow, I just return one at a time. I'm sure that you could set this up to a higher limit where you can make multiple phone calls simultaneously. And then we get all the data back. One of the things I did with this workflow is connect multiple tables to each other. And the benefit to doing that is we get the record. We get the record for the same person or the connected record from each table, which we then use in the future nodes. So I'll show you what I mean. So we go to the contacts table, and what we're doing is we're looking for the record for this specific record, which, as you can see here, contacts. This here, the W9K, and this is what we're getting here, the W9K, and then we're grabbing all that data. And then we just do the same thing for the rest of the nodes to collect all the data that we may want to use for the phone call. And they're all set up the same way. Then what we do is we take all of this data and we flatten it. And we flatten it for a couple of different reasons. So we flatten it because a lot of the data that you get, sometimes it's deeply nested, which makes it difficult to access the data in future nodes. So by flattening the data, we take some of the data that might be deeply nested and make it closer to the top. The other thing we can do with a set node is we can clean up our naming convention. And in some cases, as it is with VAPI, we can take some of the data that we get from Airtable or other sources, and we can name it in such a way that other platforms like VAPI require in order for us to make an API call. So in this particular case here, we flatten the data. We didn't have the type. I don't actually remember what that is, but the data we did get, we got the name, we got the lead type, we got the phone number, the address of the property. I did custom IDs here, but you can see here we have all that data being passed through. And then I have another set node to format the phone number, and that's required because, again, VAPI requires certain information formatted in a certain way in order for us to make the API call or API request, and then for VAPI to make the phone call to the prospect. Now, since building this workflow, because it's been a few weeks, I have since learned that I could format the phone number in the same set node as this flattened Airtable data node. So it's not a lot of bloat, but could clean that up a little bit. So all we did here was create an expression that allows us to, or that gave us a different gave us the phone number formatted in a slightly different way, rather than, you know, the phone number with the area code in parentheses followed by the 7 digits. So we have that all formatted. Then we send the data to VAPI via HTTP node. Okay, so in this node, We're using post for the method, and then we're using the call URL, so that way we can make the phone call. Now, for this API request, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple of headers. We're going to have our authorization header with our API key, and then we're going to have a content type. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you want to set up your data in such a way that, or in a way that VAPI requires, so that you can make the API request without errors. We send that data through this body content type in the JSON field. So we're going to choose send body. We're going to choose JSON as the body content type. We're going to specify the body using JSON, and then we're going to send the data over. So the assistant ID will be your assistant where the prompt goes in VAPI. The phone number ID is for the Twilio phone number. And then what we're going to have here is a few data points. Now, the data that you absolutely have to send the way that VAPI requires it is through this customer data. And the customer property, there are only so many keys that VAPI accepts. In this case, all I needed to do was send the name and number over. Now, if you remember back to the demo, the agent asked for the person by name. We did that using a token, and you can use tokens when you set up or after you set up a variable value property. And then in this case, we sent over a name, and then we sent over some metadata as well, the property address and the lead type. In hindsight, I don't think we need to send the lead type over, at least for where the workflow is now. And the metadata probably could have, or the property address probably could have been sent over as a variable valuable as well. And then we could have created a token on the VAPI end, and that might have cleaned things up a little bit better. But this is how I sent it over. It all works. The next node is the wait for call data node. And this is a really important node for making phone calls or doing automated phone calls. And the reason for that is when you make the phone call, and assuming that you want to store the post-call data, which includes like a summary and a full transcript and a recording, and honestly, you should, because that information allows you to optimize the phone call to make it a little bit tighter, deal with any hallucinations that come up. You'll notice that the agent was a little slow, wasn't as quick as I would personally like. And all of these things can be caught after the fact, and then you just have this ongoing optimization process. So the wait node is important for this because it takes a minute or two for all of this data to be created and stored. So if you don't have this wait node here and you just go from the API request to, say, the call data request, you're not going to get it because it's not going to be ready. So in the wait node, I have it set for 5 minutes. That's because I wanted to make sure there was a little bit of a buffer on the phone call. Depending on the length of the phone call or the average phone call and the number of questions you might ask, you could have this set at 2.5 or 3 minutes. My opinion is a little bit better to err on the side of caution or a little bit longer. And that way you ensure you get the data you want back. So at this point, I'm going to hop into VAPI because the next step here is we send all this data to VAPI so VAPI can make the phone call. And we will come back and look at the call data here in a second. Here is the VAPI assistant. The first message node, that is letting the agent know if it should speak first or if it should wait for the person on the other end to speak first before it does the first message. Now, when calling somebody else, most times, most people are going to pick up the phone and say something to the effect of hi or hello. So with that in mind, we want the assistant to wait for the user because that's just naturally what happens on a phone call. We wait for the user. So in my case, hello, hi, and then the first message, my name is Laura. I'm an AI assistant from Mount Hood Homes. May I speak to name? And this is the token. This is the variable, the value variable or variable value property that I mentioned. Now for the overview, Laura, friendly, empathetic, patient, upbeat, and then we give the agent a little bit of context and we inform it of the tools. There are two different tools. One is for the property data that we are collecting through the series of questions that the agent asks. And then we also have the scheduling tool. And then just a few instructions. So if the prospect agrees to chat, we're going to ask these following questions one at a time. Property type, bedrooms and bathrooms. Do they currently own the home? Timeline, motivation, what's most important, whether or not they're working with an agent. And then if they're not working with an agent, but they're interested in learning more about working with one, then they'll schedule some time for a follow-up call. And then we book the appointment for 30 minutes, inform the caller that the follow-up has been booked, and then a few SOPs. So we use the outbound caller tool to log all collected answers. Do not guess or fill in information that's not provided. If asked something you don't know, say, I'm not sure, but I'll pass your question on. A rule for reaching for if and when the agent reaches a voicemail, some context as far as when or what the date and time is, and do not provide examples unless prompted. In this case, if you remember right, the agent didn't really follow that, so this assistant could use a little bit of tweaking. Now for the LLM, I used GPT 4.1. I find that the 4.0 mini and 4.0 cluster just tends to be a bit slower and just a bit clunkier. Now, in hindsight, one thing that I would do differently with this assistant and this workflow in particular is I would change the voice. Now, I'm using Kylie for this one. Kylie, even after changing this to 4.1, I find that she tends to be a bit on the slow side, and it's just a little bit awkward. This is one of those things that the more voice workflows you build, you'll find that it's really important that you test 2 to 3 different things. So one, you test different models, and I have found that 4.1 is worth the extra price. The other thing I recommend that you test is the voice. Now, I recently did a video for a property showing appointment confirmation workflow. And in that one, I used 11 Labs, and I believe it was Laura. It was Laura, or it might have been someone else. I find that that platform and that voice worked better. You'll find that some voices are just really slow, or they sound maybe too sensual, and then other voices sound too excited. Some voices, their character traits they'll even ignore some of the prompts. So for example, I had a workflow, this after hours assistant demo, where it was aimed towards people in an emergency, like, trees falling down in your yard, or a tree fell down on your car. And there was a couple of prompts or a couple of rules informing the agent that they should show empathy to the caller. And so the caller says, a tree fell down on my car, and the agent goes, oh no, and then immediately jumps into the question as if, it was too robotic. It wasn't showing empathy. It was fake. It felt fake. So the reason why I point all that out is because it's just to demonstrate why it's so important to test different LLM models and different voice providers and different voices, because you're going to find that different voices are a better fit for different scenarios. So other than that, for the tools, we have our outbound caller and outbound schedule tool. I'll walk you through those now. So the outbound caller here, this is where we're collecting all of the information. So we're logging the number of bedrooms, the timeline, number of bathrooms, whether or not they want agent help, and so on. And then we have the outbound scheduler, and this sends the date and time over to the second part of the workflow, I believe. And there's the webhook for it. And that's all there is to the VAPI side of things. The second part of the workflow, the scheduler, in this case, I decided to use an MCP server. I just find that it's just less hassle getting it up and going. This is pretty straightforward. You're an expert scheduler for Mount Hood Homes. Your job is to check the calendar availability and book 30-minute appointments for our agents to speak with prospects. You have the tool, Google Calendar MCP, some instructions along with a couple of variables to send the data over, the date and time, and the prospect's name. And we have all this so it can look up the date and time in Google Calendar, and then it can use its name in the, I believe it's called a summary, but basically what you see in your calendar. Follow-up call with Matt, follow-up call with John, and so on. And then for SOP, do not use line breaks. The reason being is that the MCP, a lot of times the agent or MCP will send back the data or the response in multiple lines, and then the multiple lines doesn't play well when you send the data back. So we're not going to use any line breaks. And the summary format, as I mentioned earlier, name, follow-up call. And then we have the tool, which is the Google Calendar MCP, and that goes over here. And then we have the two nodes, one for checking availability, the second one for scheduling the call. And I have found that for scheduling stuff, at least in Google Calendar, I like to let the model handle the start time, the end time. I just give it the time zone, and then I give it the data from the MCP, the date and time that the prospect wants, and the name. Other than that, I have found that the agent does a really good job with this amount of autonomy. And it saves you a bit of time from trying to fine tune it. Now, if you were to run this at scale in a production environment, you might not want to give the agent that level of autonomy. We'd just take it on a case-by-case basis. Same thing here. Once we have found a time that works, we're going to schedule a call using the schedule node. So event, create, and the start and end time, we're going to define by the model. Since we let it know that we want it 30 minutes at a time and it got the preferred date and time from the prospect, that's all it needs to set up the appointment. And then for the summary, we're going to define it automatically by the model. Of course, we gave it a little bit of context or a prompt in the main agent where we said we wanted the summary to be exactly this: follow-up call or name follow-up call. And so we don't actually need to do anything further here. Now, once the phone call is done, we're now going to send an API request to get the call data back. Okay, so in this case, we're going to use a get method, and then the URL is going to be the call URL, but we're also going to send over the VAPI call ID. So in this case, we need to add the static call URL, and then we're going to dynamically insert the VAPI call ID at the end of it. Then we're going to send the same headers over as we did in the last API request. You'll notice here, authorization, bearer, and then you need to add your API key. And then we don't need to send a body. This is going to go to this URL, and it's URL with the VAPI call ID, and then it's going to grab all of the post call data. So you can see what we got here on the right. We got the call ID, the assistant, phone, type, and then we got the full transcript. We also got the recording URL, and then we got the summary. And then we also, down here, we got the tool call data. And that's all we need to fill out our Airtable, our base table in Airtable. So what we do in the next node is we're going to extract that data. So it makes it easier to extract it one value at a time, which makes it easier for us to fill out our Airtable base. So you see here, we break up the bedrooms, we break up the bathrooms, we break up the timeline, whether or not it wants agent help, motivation, property type, and so on. And this also has an error built in to where if the tool call doesn't come through, then the workflow errors and nothing makes its way back over to Airtable. Now what we're going to do, I think it's just good practice, is to have a set node before we go and update our CRM. And so in this case, we're going to add all of the data that we want to add to the CRM here in the set node. And it just tidies everything up. And you can see here on the right, we take all the property information, and then we also add the call data, such as the transcript and the summary and the recording. And that way we have everything accessible in one node. That way we can go into our Airtable node and we're just dragging and dropping from the one node rather than having to go back 2 or 3 nodes and find it all. And then we go into our Airtable nodes, we update the properties with all the property data. And all this is just a drag and drop. So bedrooms, bathrooms, and so on. And then the same thing for the call table. So we have the call ID in there. We have the date and time of the call. We have the call summary. We have the transcript, and we have the call recording. You can see all of that's being set through. And then we have the leads table. And in this case, we're going to update the status to follow-up call. And we're going to add the timeline, motivation, own home, and the important criteria, what they're looking for when they sell the home. And the status here is important because, again, now that it's set to follow up, we will not call them again via this workflow. So you don't have to worry about calling a prospect twice. And then in the Airtable, you'll see here in the leads for Matt Gear, it's set to follow up. And then we have the timeline, we have the motivation, and then we have the important criteria and whether or not they own the home. And then for the call, we have the date and time of the call summary. We have the entire transcript. And then you won't be able to hear this through my speaker, but you can click on the call recording URL here and you can actually listen to the call. I would recommend doing that while reading the transcript. And then from there, you can actually optimize your agent for numerous things. And then we have the property data, which includes the bedroom and bathrooms and the property type. And there you have it, a cold calling system for real estate agents that handles phone call, that handles reaching out to prospects automatically. I don't know about you, but a lot of people don't like to cold call. It's also one of those tasks that takes a lot of time, doesn't often have a high hit rate, and it's just time that you could use doing other types of higher leverage work. You could be running this workflow while showing a property to somebody else, while actually trying to make a deal. So I hope this shows you what is possible with AI, with a combination of platforms. I hope it shows you the value of having a workflow set up like this in a business such as real estate. And again, if you want to get this template, the VAPI prompts, and the Airtable base all for free. Just use the link in the description, head over to my website, sign up for my email list, and I'll send that to you immediately. And that'll do it for this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the description or let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.